What if the most dangerous men in town turned out to be the kindest? It started with a sound that didn't belong on that quiet suburban street. The deep rumble of Harley engines cutting through the afternoon air like thunder rolling across a calm sky. 4 bikers rode in, their black vests bearing the fiery insignia of the Hells Angels, their shadows stretching long on the warm pavement. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Mothers pulled children indoors, and even the wind seemed to hesitate. But amid that rumble and steel, a smaller, softer voice rose, trembling, innocent, and heartbreakingly desperate. "Sir, will you buy my bike?" The men slowed, engines idling low. At the edge of the sidewalk stood a little girl, no more than 6 years old. Her hair was light and messy, her dress too neat for how worn her shoes looked. A pink bicycle with a white basket stood beside her, and in her hands she clutched a cardboard sign that read, "For sale." The smallest biker, or perhaps the kindest, stopped his engine and climbed off. The others followed, heavy boots thudding on the pavement. He knelt before the child, the chrome of his bike glinting behind her like a mirror to a cruel world. Her name was Mira, and her eyes held something that shouldn't exist in a child's face: exhaustion. Behind her, under a tree in the distance, an older woman sat slumped against the trunk, wrapped in a blanket, pale and thin. The biker's throat tightened as Mira spoke again, clutching her sign a little tighter. "Please, sir, Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." The biker's name was Ryder. His brothers called him Wolf, but the nickname never really fit. Beneath the tattoos and leather was a man who had lost more than most people could imagine. A father who'd walked away, a son who never came home, and a faith in the world that he thought was long gone. But that day, kneeling on that hot pavement, he felt something stir again. He asked her softly what she meant, and between halting breaths and tiny tears, Mira told him everything. Her mother, Clara, had worked at a local catering company owned by a man everyone in town respected. Mr. Hensley, the CEO, smiled on magazine covers and donated to charities for the cameras. When the company downsized, Clara was among those fired. She pleaded with him, begged to keep her job just a few weeks longer so she could feed her daughter. But Hensley didn't care. He said she was replaceable. Since then, Clara had been too weak to find new work. The bills piled up, the fridge emptied, and pride kept her from asking for help. Mira had taken her only toy, her pink bicycle, and decided to sell it for food. Ryder felt something inside him snap, like the last thread holding back years of buried anger. His brothers, Tank, Viper, and Mason, had seen that look before. Without a word, they nodded. It wasn't pity they felt, it was rage, the kind born from seeing innocence crushed by greed. Ryder reached into his vest, pulled out his wallet, and placed a wad of bills in the little girl's trembling hand. "Keep the bike, kiddo," he murmured, his voice low, rough with emotion. But this wasn't the end, not for him. He couldn't just ride away, knowing some powerful man had stripped everything from a woman and her child. He told Mira to stay with her mother, promised he'd come back soon, and then the engines roared to life again. The Hells Angels weren't saints, but they had their own kind of justice. They didn't use guns or violence that day. What they used was truth. They tracked down Hensley's office, a tall glass building that gleamed in the sunlight, a monument to arrogance. The 4 men walked in like thunder after lightning, boots echoing against marble floors. The receptionist froze. Ryder's eyes found Hensley's through the glass wall of his office. A man with a gold watch, a fake smile, and hands that had never worked an honest day in his life. "What is this?" Hensley scoffed as they entered. But Ryder didn't shout. He placed the for sale sign on the CEO's pristine desk, the same cardboard sign Mira had held. "That," he said quietly, "is what your greed cost." For the first time, the polished businessman looked shaken. Ryder told him about the little girl, the mother starving under a tree, and the bicycle worth more in love than all his cars combined. Hensley tried to defend himself, mumbling about business and layoffs. But his excuses died when he saw the fury in those men's eyes. Not criminal rage, but moral fire. They didn't hurt him. They didn't have to. Instead, Ryder leaned close and said, "You don't get to buy forgiveness, but you do get a chance to do what's right." By sunset, news had spread across town that the CEO who once fired a struggling mother had anonymously donated a year's worth of groceries to families in need, paid off hospital bills for single parents, and rehired those he'd wronged. No one knew what changed his heart. Only a few rough men and a little girl with a pink bike did. When Ryder and his brothers returned to that tree later that evening, Mira ran to them, her eyes wide with joy. Her mother, Clara, stood now, still weak, but smiling for the first time in weeks. The light caught her face, and Ryder noticed the way her hand trembled when she tried to thank him. He simply nodded, tipping his head as the engines cooled beside them. "You don't owe us anything," he said. "Just promise you'll never give up." They shared bread that night, the bikers, the woman, and the little girl who'd sold her bike not for toys, but for love. The sunset painted gold across the chrome, the grass, and the cardboard sign that now lay folded in Mira's lap. For a moment, the world didn't seem so broken anymore. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Humanity Tales Studio. Every click helps stories of real kindness reach those who need hope the most. And before we end, tell us in the comments below, what would you have done if you were in Ryder's place? Because sometimes all it takes is one act of courage to make the whole world believe in kindness again.